Hey everybody, I'm Jason from So Percussion, and this is another Brooklyn Bound podcast. I'm very psyched about our show. This podcast is kind of linked to a show coming up November 12th, 2020. It's a Thursday at 7 p.m. I hope you guys can tune in, and I'm very pumped to have a friend, colleague, collaborator, badass, Shodekeh Talifero. Welcome.
Good morning or good afternoon. How you doing?
Yeah, right, man. You're 15 minutes. You're almost, yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Man, thanks for doing this. Yeah, it's good. You got your coffee. I feel like I need my coffee actually. Are you drinking coffee?
Orange juice.
Okay, nice. Okay, cool. Under wraps though, under juice out of a mug. Um, Man, well, like I was telling you, we kind of these are such fun conversations to have, and I kind of have these 5 questions to go through. But I know, we met a few years back through Judah Adashi in Baltimore, and I'm so grateful for him. We did some work together there, and it's been nice to reconnect and have a bunch of projects to be thinking about right now. But what this first question is kind of like the broadest one, and I don't think I know the answer to it so much. Like, you describe yourself in a great way, I believe, as in 3 ways. As you're gonna correct me in a second here. As a breath artist, a vocal percussionist, and a beatboxer.
Yeah.
And so, what was your process from a young age? Like, when did you discover this musical art form, and draw us some kind of line from small Shodekeh to big badass Shodekeh?
Um, let's see. So, as most children, I've always been good at sort of creating the sounds of my imagination, or my imagination oriented environment. It's so much fun to watch children play. It reminds you of how you used to have your imagination so much more externalized. The way that you play with your toys, the way that you play with your cars, or your action figures, or your dolls, or whatever.
Mm.
um so part of that experience of making the your imagination that much more externalized, I think part of the key of that is not just envisioning what you want to imagine, but also allowing for the sounds that you make and create and the voices that you use to make that externalized imagination that much more tangible.
Mm.
So that I think we all had as kids, and then that was amplified by my love for filmmaking, and film criticism at a really premature age. That was one of my first loves was watching films, studying films, understanding films, critiquing films. So that
How young is it? How young are you talking about? Like, just when you first started watching movies, you're like, how is this done? Or is this like,
Yeah, by 1987, I was remembering the credits of who worked on what and following the trajectory of different filmmaking careers,
mm,
um, and that was a year later after being exposed to beatboxing by way of the films of Beat Street and Crush Groove.
uh,
Dougie Fresh was featured in Beat Street, Buffy the Human Beatbox. Darren Robinson was featured in Crush Groove. So I saw that there's a musical vehicle for what I'm already naturally doing in terms of using my voice in an emulative fashion, with my action figures and toys and so forth, and emulating the sounds that I hear from motion pictures and everything. So I was an emulative vocal percussionist before a musical vocal percussionist.
mm,
Emulative in terms of just copying and mimicking the sounds of your environment, or as you externalize the world of your internal imagination, and then a musical vocal percussionist by way of beatboxing. And so let's see, fast forward to my freshman year in college. That was the year that I first became a serious practitioner of beatboxing, and I maintained it was because I was taken out of my normal environment. I was at a branch campus of Penn State University, Penn State Beaver, small place, and I was the only one on campus who could beatbox,
Mm.
and so it kind of allowed for me to stand out with this decent skill set, and I just built and cultivated the skill set from there. Had a radio
So
show.
where were you before Beaver? Where were you?
I went to Suitland High School. I was in their visual and performing arts program. My
Where,
major was
where's
TV.
that?
That's in Suitland, Maryland,
Suitland, Maryland. Okay, awesome, cool, cool, cool.
in DC. Yeah, and I
Awesome.
was a TV production major.
Oh,
Um, so the musical curiosity and applications and the film curiosity and applications kind of met each other there in the center. I went to Penn State for film, but didn't stay in the program actually. I didn't make it into the program. And music just took over. I'm not the most studious student, academically speaking.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, that was and let's see, 97 to 2006 was just this journey of do I want to pursue this full time? In 2006, I figured a way to put all the pieces together so that I could focus on music full time in a variety of different ways. And that was 14 years ago. So coming up
Very
on
cool.
10th anniversary.
Well, so when I had cut you, you had a radio show when you were in college. You had a radio show, and were you doing solo? Like, was your beatboxing practice? Was it a solo practice, or were you
It,
in
the
any bands at all that kind of worked together, or what was that scene?
The radio show allowed for my practice to go from being a solo venture to a community venture. And it gave me a chance to, of course, play all kinds of underground hip hop and classic hip hop. But it also gave me a chance to curate music that strongly incorporated beatboxing as a compositional piece. And then we would also perform live on the air a lot with other MCs, rappers, DJs, other beatboxers. And then it allowed me to network with other people who are practitioners of hip hop, rooted in different elements, whether it was b-boying or DJing and so forth. Um, got into a lot of beatbox battles
Mm.
through college, lost a couple, won most of them.
When you go to your trophy case, you're like, man, trophy after every battle.
I had some transformative losses too.
So,
And
man, I'm a it's awesome to hear this. Actually, I'm going to where I feel like I have some commonality of experience, and then like so you said 97, right?
97,
Wait,
97, yeah, freshman year.
and on or whatever, so I got to school in 95, and I went to school in Rochester at like a music conservatory, and then there was the university was kind of connected. And definitely, I mean, we've talked about this in other ways. Like, definitely at the conservatory, there was nobody who was beatboxing or rapping or anything like that, right? But at the university, there was,
Right,
and
right.
one of my friends was a bass player who made this great bridge where like late '90s was like mid '90s, late '90s, it was like the roots, like live hip hop, was like a thing that everybody, at least I was becoming hip to, as a drummer, like learning about Questlove or about like D'Angelo's records had some live drummer. Gene Lake was playing on those records, or like but even just the J Dilla beats, and like trying to learn about like beat making,
Right.
but so I was playing parties with MCs, but I wasn't around beatbox. I like the battle scene was not something I was with you until like, okay, wait, so what's a battle look like? So where was that you're on air? This is on air, or this is at a
No,
party? This is at a
my battles either happened at live hip hop events or on stage and at MC battles. Yeah, I'm trying to. Man, I got into a really great battle with DJ Rags. He was a DMC finalist. I think he was a multiple DMC finalist.
what's DMC?
Oh man, let me see if
I
I
mean,
can.
besides Run, is it connected to Run DMC?
No, it's
What's
it's a
DMC?
DJ. It's a DJ battles, DJ.
Oh, DMs.
Yeah, the DMC World DJ Championships.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Let me actually, you know what? Let me just boom, boom, and boom, like
Love
that.
it.
DMCs right there.
Oh,
Uh,
very cool.
yeah, this guy DJ Rags, amazing, amazing DJ. I saw him perform at this hip hop conference that used to happen every year at Howard University. He was battling Onyx's DJ. Incredible.
Wow.
DJ Rags had this moment where he was emulating the sound of a helicopter with his scratching technique, and the whole crowd was like, "Whoa, okay, all right." And then Onyx's DJ, I can't recall his name right now, but he had the
Wow.
last uh, opportunity to respond. Um, and you know, it's actually pretty funny because DJ Rags, he's of European descent. He's white, right?
Okay.
Onyx's DJ, he was black, and he just displayed this holistic response of showmanship and skill. And he was cutting this line from MCs Act Like They Don't Know by KRS-One, and the line he kept coming back to on the turntables was, "Let me show you whose ass is the blackest."
Wait, this is DJ Rags or this is?
No, this was the other DJ.
Okay, nice, nice. Okay.
Yeah, he's black.
Right.
He kept cutting, "Let me show you whose ass is the blackest," and then he kept cutting that line back and forth over and over again, and then he proceeds to pull down his pants and throws the other guy while still cutting, "Let me show you whose ass is the black." It's just like,
Oh my goodness. So
yes,
these battles are won by like crowd?
crowd participation, crowd response.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Judges also?
you'll have judges for
Yeah.
some. If it's more community oriented, then the crowd determines who
It
the winner.
becomes clear. Yeah.
So DJ Rags lost that battle, and then I wound up battling him a couple years later.
Huh.
When I was in college, went out to the show in Lancaster, PA, and he just happened to be performing. And then my friend is like, "Yo, Beatbox versus the DJ. Yo, y'all, who wants to see a battle? Y'all want to see a battle?" The whole crowd's going ape shit.
Of course. Yeah.
All right, and all my friends are like, "Yo, you know you love the battle. Go ahead, battle." I'm like, "All right, whatever." And we were going back and forth, and it was a close battle. But man, I really showed heart, and I wound up winning that battle that day.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, the
That's
last
not where the way you were telling the story, I thought you were about to let it down. You know.
no, I mean, he was definitely giving me a workout. I mean, there was a moment where he was cutting so fast on a crossfader, his hand looked like a freaking blur.
Hmm.
I mean, incredible set of skills. The last thing that I did, I think my last response was I was cutting the sound of a gun being cocked, and then I emulated the sound of a gunshot. And
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah, you have pretty realistic sound. From what I've experienced, it's pretty like, did people freak out or they knew what was happening? It was like, what the?
yeah. That battle was in 1999, and when I saw
Oh,
him battle Onyx's DJ, that was in '96. So I battled him 3 years
3 years
later.
later.
Yeah, it was an incredible experience.
And were you always you were always a beatboxer? You were never an MC or a DJ. Like beatbox has always been
Yeah, I messed around with the rapping a little bit, but that didn't really take. I don't think that was
your
the way
path or your yeah.
relationship that I have with my body and my muscle memory. I think I needed something more intense in terms of technical practice and skill and immersion, technical immersion. And then I DJ'd a little bit when I had my radio show, but beatboxing was always the primary lead focus.
Mm.
Um, so then let's see, 2006, I'm playing music for the dance classes at Towson University. You know,
So
when actually
you've moved from Beaver, you've moved back home, or you moved to Baltimore, or where are you in 2006?
Baltimore, yeah, at that time, yeah. And man, I would love to actually show you a clip. Um, this is me providing music for a ballet technique class at the Towson University Department of Dance.
Oh, cool.
And this was about 8 years later after I had already started in 2006. This video was done in 2014, and the whole video is basically encapsulating my relationship to dance, specifically ballet technique, as a beatboxer, breath artist, vocal percussionist.
Oh,
Um, yeah, listen for the parts that are rooted in vocal percussion, beatboxing, and breath art if you can. Actually,
yeah.
it's a
I need some more schooling. I feel like with the project we're doing together, these three practices, like for me, the breath art and beatbox, like that's clear. Vocal percussion, I mean, it feels like it lives in a middle world, maybe, but maybe that's why I like don't have the quite the ears to.
well, that's interesting. It kind of does live in the middle world, depending on your method. But I'll try to break them down after I play this clip for you.
Awesome. And you doing the? Are you sharing the sound?
Uh, is the
Did you click?
can you hear that?
Yeah, kind of. Actually, did you when you did your screen share, did you click those two boxes? There's like a share computer sound where we'll
Uh,
get some really good sound. Maybe if you unshare for a second, you got to do it again,
okay.
but we'll get. So when you share, do you see down the left? There's like a, I think it says like, I don't know, share computer sound or something.
Got it. Okay, we're
Yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah.
Here we go.
I was doing a project on how music affects dancers and whether or not music helps to make a more collaborative professional dancer. So I spoke to Shodekeh because we've had him in our classes for years now, and we had a really detailed discussion about how without the help of a live musician within the classroom, the dancer can never truly find the ability to embrace the movement and find those little nuances within the movements that you don't get from a traditional CD. Gotcha. So it's also really interesting to then have him for ballet because ballet is such a classical art form in so many senses, and they usually used to stick to such traditional guidelines of having such classical music playing. So it's really great to have him come in because it gives us a different look on the same combinations we might have done within another class.
Oh, that was just good. I remember that. I've seen that next clip. That's really cool, man.
Thank you. So basically, and actually, so this is what's happening when, and let me play a little more of this, of me doing external percussion synthesized with the vocal percussion. A little more of that.
So where were we living? Was that a pretty vocal percussion world right there?
That was vocal percussion and breath art combined, or breath percussion. But yeah, you heard bass, hi-hat, snare.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Here, this is more a vocal percussion, external percussion synthesis, or more in terms of style, it's more beatbox oriented because the style is rooted in a much more hip hop approach. And I began to experiment with this more around 2013, 14, combining external percussion with the beatboxing just to amplify the two worlds. But the core was always beatboxing, vocal percussion, breath art. So a little bit of that, and basically, this is what's happening when I'm, whether I'm in a process of understanding what to do in a battle, playing music for a dance technique class, or working on my own compositions, or responding to a piece that I've never heard before, and I have to find my way, not just as an improviser, but as an arranger and as a composer. This is what I'm doing. The Udu Loop, which was pioneered by strategy theorist John Boyd, uh, and I'm essentially observing what's happening while orienting myself, while making the decision and acting within this constructive feedback loop of pattern discernment, understanding patterns by way of habits, by way of physical space, by way of everything. And this is another.
Mm. That was the OODA, the observe, orient, decide, act is the.
Yes.
I see. Yeah.
And this is, I think, the most universal bridgeway in terms of communicating what I do, not just as a beatboxer, but as a composer and as an improviser. I am processing, like in the ballet example that I just showed, I had no idea what he was going to do that day or for any other day for that matter. But I have to be ready to operate within this observation and action feedback loop as a way of arriving at a very constructive and specific pattern that could be applied to their technique. This is something we all use all the time. Jazz musicians use it, hip hop musicians use it, but it's universal in anything and everything else that we do, whether it's riding a skateboard or practicing martial arts or playing a game of chess. We're constantly observing, orienting ourselves, driving a car, riding a bicycle. It's so universal. So I do a lot of reading and studying on my own as an autodidact, which is part and parcel of being a beatboxer, a hip hop practitioner. It's very guided by self-driven learning and study and research. Yeah, this is a big part of my world, and this is how I worked on what I was going to do for the concert next week and the compositions that I'm doing for So Perk, and so yeah, I use
And I
this.
love this. I remember that you shared that diagram once before when we were talking, and the one thing I love about it is all the arrows that constantly go back to observe. Like you're going through this thing, but you can always it's like you're observing and you orient. Oh, I need to observe some more and orient, and then I made a decision, but then I need to deserve, something else changes. Man, I want to get deeper into this concept because I studied improvisation in my undergrad, and the mindset of improvising and the mindset of playing composed music for me, I want them to come closer and closer together, but they're kind of different mindsets, but part of the way I've talked about improvisation is kind of like asking yourself a series of yes or no questions very quickly, and maybe the first question is oftentimes like, do I need to make sound right now? Like if me and you are improvising together and you are killing it, it's like, maybe the answer is no. Like, I don't need to make any sound. Ask myself the question again. Nope. Yes. And so I guess that's observing, right? That's like maybe observing and orienting, and then as soon as you say yes, that's deciding like, okay, how am I going to act? Like, do I need to compliment what Shodekeh is doing, or do I need to bring something, the same or different, or, like, but I love it. This feels like a much deeper kind of way of describing that practice that I've kind of talked to myself about as these series of yes or no questions.
Yeah.
I love this idea. So OODA Loop is the kind of concept, is John Boyd's description of this. That's really cool.
And he extracted his theories from being a U.S. fighter pilot. And, can you imagine trying to get into someone else's OODA loop
Yeah,
while
right.
in the midst of an aerial dogfight and
Yeah.
be able to discern the pattern and outmaneuver them essentially? But this happens on the ground as well. Yeah, it's playing music for a dance. I believe was my first foray into understanding that there's something so much more deeper than just improvising, and there's something deeper than just composing. It's this you're solving problems basically, but you're solving the problems in a manner that's actually quite comprehensive and whether it's, oh man, providing music for an ALE 2 masterclass.
Mm.
Uh, talk about getting your ass kicked.
Yeah, it's heavy. Yeah.
The combinations from Lester Horton technique can be so complex. The phrases can be so complicated. I mean, you really have to be on your A game, and it's solving problems by using music for dance technique, and then in other instances, it's solving problems on the roadway, and you're trying to race your wife home.
Yeah. Yeah. Should I told Beth I was gonna be home? Going here. Totally, yeah.
In so many different ways, but it's this I think is very useful when people say,
Man, when was your, like, I don't know why, because drummers so oftentimes play in dance classes too. But I think maybe it's because I went to a conservatory. Like I never had that experience really of playing for dance classes. But like, so when was your connection? So after school, getting to Baltimore, 2006, I'm diving into my musical practice. Like, when did the connection with dance come for you? Had it always been there because of a beatboxing practice, or did you discover it based on, connections in Baltimore, or just by happenstance?
So yeah, great question. And I guess actually this would be sort of the OODA loop utilized in terms of long-term strategy. The OODA loop is great for solving problems as a tactician, but here in Baltimore, I was beatboxing for a weekly poetry event, and it was called Slamicide.
Mm.
And I sort of politely inserted myself into their world, and I essentially created a dynamic where I was beatboxing there every week as an accompanist.
Mm.
Poets, the MCs, the musicians, the feature, everything. So I had to, solve problems on the spot for when someone was reciting a poem or a song. It was
Mm.
great problem solving exercise. So I figured what I needed was a residency, a sustained platform, so that I can always have someone come to see me, someone new, but I could also have return visitors get a better understanding of what I do over time, because what I do is so obscure to most of the world of music. So I figured a residency would open more doors for me moving forward.
Mm.
Sure enough, one fateful day, Vincent Thomas was there in the audience, and he was a dance professor from the Towson University Department of Dance. And he said he found himself moving in response to what I was doing. He said he saw something in my spirit, and he handed me his card. He said, "Please contact this person. I want to work with you." I said, "Great." I thought he wanted me to come in to do a master class or something.
Mm.
So I called the assistant to the chair of the department, and she says, "Yeah, so we're gonna need you about every single day, more or less, till the end of the semester. Is that all right?"
Like, whoa.
Yeah. And we're gonna offer you $20 an hour. Is that okay? At 28 years old, I was
Yeah, yeah. Let's do this.
so I used that residency to magnetize an advanced platform essentially, and that's sort of been my strategy over the years. To not take any opportunity for granted, but also use it as a way of magnetizing bigger and greater challenges. So that's how I got into dance. I magnetized. I didn't know what the poetry residency would magnetize, but I knew it would magnetize something powerful, and that's what happened. So yeah, my life hasn't been the same ever since.
Yeah, so cool. I definitely want to get to what you're doing on Brooklyn Bound, but we've had some conversations before where you've described your process as an autodidact as very kind of connected to what you do as a beatboxer, and that the vibe I was getting where, like, so many people in the classical world, I don't know, maybe if either of my kids grow up to play piano, they will have started playing piano from a young age, youngish, not that we're like, but like in the classical music world, sometimes you start young on an instrument taking lessons, and that leads to like taking lessons with a mentor in college or whatever. And you've described, like, I imagine with beatboxing there's mentorship on some level, but is it like, so what's the right, like, what's the, I guess what I'm thinking is like, and maybe as a drummer I'm somewhere in between. It's not like I started taking lessons when I was 3 to become a virtuosic there's a lot of like learning from records and that kind of thing. But so what's the kind of as a beatboxer, as that practice, like what's the autodidact side of that? How do you feel describe that?
I've found that it's been rooted in uh, self-guided practice, discovery, and exploration and experimentation. Um, your instrument is virtually with you anywhere and everywhere that you go. So there's that aspect of it in terms of autodidactism. The other aspect of it in terms of being an autodidact, it's that it's a communal learning experience, and you're learning from your peers. You're teaching younger generations, and you're learning from those who came before you, the pioneers, your mentors, and you essentially trade techniques and trade secrets and methods and approaches with one another. And it happens outside of your standard institutions of learning or higher learning. So I would say hip hop is a really great example of advanced autodidactism, in that the school is the experience itself, and vice versa. The community is the school itself, and vice versa. And it's a practice that, in terms of, I guess, another main aspect of the autodidactism is that it's deeply rooted in advanced intuition, highly focused intuition. And a lot of the techniques you learn by way of intuition. And then over months or maybe weeks or over the years, you begin to perform a kinesiological deconstruction of the very techniques that you were developing, that started in intuition. And then there's this awesome feedback loop that occurs between a very objectified and intellectual deconstruction and then the intuitive creation of the techniques itself. It's really quite beautiful. And you don't put the objectified deconstruction ahead of the intuition. You never really do that. Intuition is the starting point. That's the catalyst, and that intuition is also deeply tied to the communal experience, the mentor-apprentice relationship, whether it's paying it forward or paying it backwards. So yeah, it's holistic in that way, and then the objectified deconstruction of it kind of reveals itself over time, and then you start to see that it translates into how you can perform an objectified deconstruction of other things outside of music. So yeah, it's
What do you mean? Help me with what's help me with objectified deconstruction. I'm trying to think, like, does that mean like when you get really deep into like where in your like talking about that real like
yeah,
the specifics of it, or the as opposed to just like you hear something and you're like, how am I going to do that? Like
Right.
teaches you how to go shh, you figure that out or whatever. So
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
beatboxer, you do that on like, you dig down 1,000 levels deeper than I know how to say shh. Like, you dig down, but you find those things intuitively mostly, and then sometimes you find them because somebody can teach you them.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's definitely one part of taking the hyper objectified approach. But the other part of it is it usually shows up like this. Oh man, that's so amazing. How do you make that sound?
Mm.
As opposed to saying, who taught you that or who inspired you to do that?
Oh yeah.
You know, tell us about the history of it. Is this rooted in a specific culture? So that's what I mean by sort of putting
Mm.
objectification ahead of the experience of it all. And I think the and I believe that the culturally driven intuition approach, I think it can foster much more accountability, and it can foster much more responsibility in terms of, because it's an oral tradition, right? So if the intuition comes first, you're internalizing the techniques, but you're internalizing the inspirations. Like for example, um, let's see, what's a great example? So this snare sound that I do, uh, the beatboxer who popularized that was Kenny Muhammad, the Human Orchestra. He has this crazy technique of doing an inhalation of the letter K. So instead of exhaling the K sound, it's reversed.
Huh.
Really crazy technique, and he popularized that more than anyone else.
And so when you got to break that down, which I think is what you're about to do without me even asking this question, but so when you heard that sound, you you met him, or you say, I love that sound, let me figure out how to make that sound?
I
Or
saw him perform it, and I said, "Let me figure out how to make that sound," and I hope to meet him one day
mm,
so I can ask him more questions.
yeah.
It happened about 4 years later. I did have a chance to meet him. So yeah, that's what I mean by the more holistic understanding of it. It's, man, that's crazy. How does he do that? Let me learn that, and I hope I get to perform with him one day. I hope I get to learn from him one day. It's this that it's much more rooted in paying tribute as opposed to taking the techniques and then just running with them.
Yeah. Man, that's
Um,
so interesting. That's like said, that's a big conversation in our community right now, in the percussion community.
mm,
And it's almost like before we started rolling, we were talking about some things where it's just like, you've been thinking about things for many years, and like in the last 4 months, like I've been like, our community has been like catching up to think about some of these, how you celebrate influence, what's taking and what's being inspired by, what's appropriating and what's acknowledging.
yeah,
um, and when you are making music in a space where many different cultures are coming together, and then especially when you add on, where a lot of these cultures are coming from, white people going to other cultures and saying, oh, that's cool, let me take that, without any kind of acknowledgement of influence, like where these things, we're pretty late to the game to thinking about some of these things on a deep level, but it's very much in the conversation of like, how do we celebrate influence without appropriating or stealing, and it feels like that's something that's been maybe a part of your conversation for a while, maybe without some of the, I don't know, like, how to make sure you're connected to the past and the sounds that you're learning from someone else. But then
yeah,
it feels like, if you describe that one snare sound that you use a lot, I imagine you could describe a few others, and
yes,
some of them you've gotten from other folks, and some of them maybe are yours, or maybe your
yeah,
vibe is like, that's so interesting to me.
yeah. Another great example is another one of my mentors, Dred Archie Jr. His name is DOA.
Mm,
Amazing, amazing beatboxer. Uh, he popularized the formation of the first beatbox supergroup, the trio. It was him, Kenny Muhammad, and Emanon Johnson. He has this one
mm,
signature sound that he does. Well, two signature sounds of his. One is
Right.
so I use those sounds a lot.
Was the signature was the that
Yeah,
vibe?
that was the signature, and the other is like another sound that he uses a lot is the like this the ripping of a record of a needle across a record, and he'll incorporate that as an additional layer to a bass drum or a snare. So he'll do something like and I have a direct mentor apprentice relationship with him, so that tribute is almost automatic, you know. And so I feel like there's enough there's a level of accountability that's so ingrained in using those techniques, not using them too much, but using them to the extent that I can always say, yeah, DOA, and I brought him down for my vocal art series, and we're working on an album together. So it's rooted in he's like one of my musical fathers or uncle or uncles.
Right.
Excuse me. So, but if I was distanced, like his one of his partners in crime from many years, Emanon Johnson, he has this really wild signature sound that he uses more than I do. And well, first of all, the technique is quite difficult. But since I'm not as close to Emanon, I don't feel that I have the level of responsibility to use it as much.
And is that kind of is that a self-imposed kind of like, you know, or if you did kind of use that sound, would there be somebody in your community who was like, wait a minute, why show?
That's interesting.
You know,
I don't think anyone would be too fussy with me, but I would be fussy with myself.
right. So it's kind of
imposed code. And that signature sound, I mean, it's so out of this world. I mean, it really ties into the paralinguistics of beatboxing. And the sound goes like this. Let me see if I can get it together.
Wild. Man, where does that, or does, like in beatboxing, I feel like I hear you talk a lot about like a bass drum snare drum hi-hat paradigm, like that it's like that's, you know, where does that fall in there? That's like a ornament. What's that?
That's definitely a beatboxing technique.
Yeah.
Because it was popularized within the vocal tradition of beatboxing. And then the sound is also used in conjunction with bass, hi-hat, snare, other emulations. So, for example, a great example of breath art, let me move through the modalities. So, breath art would be something like. Vocal percussion would be maybe sleigh bells or wood blocks or other specific percussion instruments, or a collection of different isolated percussion instruments, or a trap set. So moving from sleigh bells, wood block to trap set. Beatboxing would be trap set section, electronic emulation, and turntables. So that might sound like So
Yeah.
there's the vocal ensembleization that occurs. The one man band being filtered through the practice of beatboxing, or the one man filtered through the practice of beatboxing, but it's always rooted in a strong vocal percussion technique. So
Right.
those are the main differences.
And so when you just went into that beatboxing jam, like I had never heard you, I don't think that I'm losing track of which kind of person you know, like what the influence was, but that one kind of crazy sound that you had just I'm not even gonna try, like the that came in this beatbox example that I hadn't heard. And then I feel like you were also using that inhale K with the mix with the man. And so why, like, man, this is so interesting. Thanks for breaking it down for me. I feel like every time we hang out, like I just learn. It's like, you know, what are those books, like what you never learned in music school? You know, it's like, fuck, I'm a drummer, man. Like but like the when I was growing up, you mentioned DMC before, you know, so like my first hip hop was definitely like listening to Run DMC, you know, and then it was like, you know, I don't know, the Fat Boys and Criss Cross. Like I'm trying to think of what that time was, and then like I learned about Tribe Called Quest, and then I got. But so if I were, and then the Roots was in college or whatever, and Outkast and Black, whatever the late '90s was. If I was ever, like, if I was a kid, when I was a kid, imitating somebody beatboxing, I'm always putting my hand over my mouth. You know what I mean? Like like doing that. And is that because, like, I think I associate these sounds with a microphone. And I know you're using a microphone in terms of like, there's a microphone in your computer right now or whatever you're doing. But like right now, I mean, like when we work together, I know you use a microphone, but these sounds you're all making basically without a microphone, you know? But like, so how much is the microphone a part of the practice?
Oh, great question.
And is that what this is? You know, like when somebody, is it like cupping the...
That could be used as a way of, I guess you could call it manual compression in a way, manual amplification. I have never really used that technique.
You should really use it. You can say you got it from me, man. I feel like we know each other well enough. You could be like, man, I got this technique from this guy. He's in this he's in this band, so it's cool. I played with him a couple times. Sorry, man, that's totally inappropriate.
No, that's all good. So let's see. But the microphone techniques can be used for so many different things. Man, like for example, let me show you this clip. Let me show you a clip of Kenny Muhammad. So he's using microphone technique simultaneously as a way of resonance amplification, but also showmanship at the same time. So this is him performing at Columbia University years ago. And it's really crazy what he's doing here.
So what was his name? The Human Orchestra was, I forget.
Yeah, Kenny Muhammad, the Human Orchestra. Yep. So what he does here is he goes back and forth between oral amplification and then neck resonance amplification. And then as he transitions between the two resonance spots, he allows for the acoustic space to amplify it in transition. So there are three sources of amplification in this clip. And well, I mean, I'll let Kenny Muhammad demonstrate it.
Awesome, amazing.
This is the best. So Kenny Muhammad performing the wind technique at Columbia University. And you'll hear some elements of what I maintain to be breath art, breath music, which is, I mean, his work is a huge inspiration for me pursuing and researching and going into a deeper practice of what I consider to be breath art. So let's see what he does here. Oh my Yes, sir.
Yeah. Right. So that's I mean, when he was going here, this is like what's happening in his neck, and he's amplifying that resonating box, and then saying, and then check. It's like a filter, like there's some crazy filter. Like, let's check out this, and then back. That's amazing.
So that's a great. I think that's a great answer to your question. Microphone technique can be used in a variety of different ways, but all the techniques I maintain they have to be performed acoustically first and foremost. Don't want to be over reliant on microphone technique because it's there to support the oh my god factor, not override it. You know.
Yeah. Right. Man, so I think officially I may have asked one question, one of my 5, and I think we're in what I would usually say as our number 2, which is just kind of like, what's your practice? I feel like I have 8,000 questions, like, but so I want to get to Brooklyn Bound a bit. There's all these. There's a cool project we're doing together where you're writing some music for So to perform, and I feel like we're just gonna have a whole other podcast and talk about that, because it's like it's in 3 movements. It focuses on the idea of breath art, vocal percussion, and beatbox. Like there's so many questions I have there, but I'm gonna state that, and then I'm gonna move that aside and say next weekend let's hang out again or whatever. Like next month let's hang out again. But so am I right? So on this Brooklyn Bound, you're doing a set by yourself that I want to hear about, and then you're sitting in on some music I've written, which is kind of how we met each other. And is it fair to say in the recordings you sent that we're getting together for that project, it feels like of the 2, one of them it is called Coda, is what I sent you. I think it was called Coda there. That feels breath art inspired. Is that right? Like these like long kind of like which I remember almost when we met, I think I had heard, like, Judah had said like, oh man, there's this amazing friend of mine, Shodekeh, he's a beatboxer. So I think I was prepared for that. I didn't understand. I hadn't imagined that there was this whole other side of what you were doing that was going to make its way into some of the more ambient stuff I was right. So Coda feels like it's breath art.
Yes.
And in the more rhythmic in build up, is that more vocal percussion?
Yeah, I would say that's more vocal percussion. And if I had to describe it as specifically as possible, I would say that's more rooted in vocal percussion and breath percussion. I believe some of the patterns I was doing for that were
yeah. And so that like I feel like in that one it was really cool. Like you were working with this clock that you were like, there was like always some kind of like either or, like not those sounds of course, but those those beats. Awesome. And so then I want to hear more about your set. I want to ask you 2 questions. Can you tell us about your solo set? And in talking about so far and talking about all these sounds that have been made, you've been kind of bringing in these amazing influences. Like, is there does your amazingness come from, you know, kind of this very specific, you know, building a specific sound set based on other people's sounds? And what's the Shodekeh sound? Like, what's like, you know, the dude or the girl that's 20 years younger than you who's listening to you is like, oh my God, I've never heard that. You know, what are they going to tell me is the Shodekeh thing? Those are two questions.
Right. So in the solo performance, I basically went from sort of setting the stage as a vocalist that's rooted in emulative vocal percussion. The first thing that you will hear me do is the sound of vinyl static, which has become one of my signature sounds. The other beatboxers do vinyl static as well, but I have my own specific technique that I use for that emulation, which sounds like. So there's an intro section, and then I shift from emulative vocal percussionist to breath artist. And I stay there for a while, actually. And then I shift into creating patterns as a vocal percussionist, and then finally as a beatboxer, and then bring it full circle back to emulative vocal percussion. It's actually, in a way, the performance is rooted in using the stage to present some of my theories and ideas about beatboxing. And you sort of see me shift from one modality to the next based on location. So I walk up a flight of stairs in a stairwell, and I stay there for about 5 minutes, focused on one or two modalities, and then I move up another set of stairs, exploring another set of modalities and so forth. So you see the shift happen musically, you see the shift happen in relationship to space as well. Yeah, I did 2 takes of it, and I was pretty winded afterwards. And no pun intended. Funny, looking back on it, I thought, oh man, I should have added this final modality to the piece, but I figured, okay, well, let me maybe save that for another piece or another presentation or another opportunity with soul percussion.
Absolutely.
You know, it's interesting because as I moved from different modalities in this set of about 3 or 4 different condensas, basically, I was essentially looking to illuminate this, and I'm really excited to share this actually. Okay, so I taught a class, as a special guest, I taught a master class for speech and dialect, a speech and dialect course in the Towson University Department of Theater as innovator in residence for the College of Fine Arts and Communication. And I basically presented my sort of a micro dissertation, my argument as me defending the case that beatboxing exists as the most advanced vocological and vocal arts paradigm known within the human experience. So that was my argument. And these are the tenets of my argument, the 3 main ones. I'm developing 2 more, actually. So the first one is beatboxing serves as an ultimate cultural and social laboratory of vocal experimentation, at which any and all willing participants are welcome to attend, with no institutional gatekeeping preventing individuals or communities from becoming engaged based on race, gender, heritage, ethnicity, and so forth, which in turn increases the exponentiality of technique, cultivation, refinement, and unification. So basically, the hip hop tenets of peace, love, unity, and having fun, in which all human participants are welcome, contribute and learn from one another and build community. The second one, this is really important actually. Beatboxing transcends all language barriers through the naturally convergent phenomenon and practice of synonymous vocal percussion, emulative, musical, and linguistic vocal percussion, in which cultural, social, and scientific paradigms are made to serve as constructive bridges instead of as preventive boundaries.
Yeah.
I maintain that emulative vocal percussion, musical vocal percussion, and linguistic vocal percussion use the same building blocks in terms of the thought speech connection that occurs cognitively and manifests kinesiologically within human communication. The same building blocks that you hear from that's an inhalation, but that's also that can be used expressively, or that can be used music. Same building block. That's the thing that really allows beatboxing to transcend all language barriers. And it also allows for beatboxing to hold the greatest capacity to synthesize any and all vocal practices, linguistic paradigms, and extended vocal techniques through emulation or vocal technique convergence. So you'll hear beatboxers do spoken word and do the beat at the same time. You'll hear beatboxers sing a phrase or a chorus or a whole song with the beat. You'll hear a beatboxer use multiphonics or Tuvan Hume singing the beat at the same time. No other vocal art form can claim such a high capacity to synthesize based on synonymous vocal percussion. So I feel like you'll see this manifest in the solo performance, more so by intuitive observation of the performance, but I shared this with references and video clips and all kinds of crazy stuff with the theater class, and I had a really great time. Speaking of which, let me show you one thing that I shared with the class. This might blow your mind a little bit. Check this out. Tell me why the National Library of Medicine at the NIH is preserving scientific literature on beatboxing. Huh?
Cool. Okay.
Really interesting stuff. And this is just one example of other pieces of scientific literature that have been written on beatboxing. Now, from what I'm seeing, they're doing it from a very objectified perspective. Just that we see that trend run through and through throughout Western paradigms of science. But still, nevertheless, it's fascinating. And here's another article: video fibroscopic study of laryngeal behavior in the human beatbox. And
so you're saying objective instead of intuitive being the more kind of conscious of being excited about emulating a sound, but knowing where it comes from.
Yeah, not extracting the cultural paradigm from the functional paradigm of it.
Yeah.
They're always part and parcel of one another. They're always constantly one another.
That's amazing.
So yeah, just interesting stuff. And I'm trying to dig deeper into. I call it the apex theory. That's the title of it. And I'm trying to figure out, okay, well, how is this used as a series of healing properties or as a healing method? See, now you got me excited. Okay, this is crazy. This is really, really beautiful. I have a friend of mine who works in New York City. His name is Chesney Snow, and he has this program called Beat Rockers. We're planning on working on some stuff together. This is really amazing. They were using beatboxing as a means of providing support for blind students at the Lavelle School in New York City.
Very cool.
Yeah, beautiful stuff.
Cool, man. Wow.
Really amazing stuff. So this would be one of those main tenets of my theory of how it can be used as a means of providing systemic healing for individuals. Oh, that's interesting. That's Taylor McFerrin. He used to be part of the Beat Rockers program. That's Bobby McFerrin's son.
Oh, killer.
Amazing beatboxer,
Uh,
actually.
uh,
And so yeah, that's I've used it also in the context of providing education for disabled students at the Kennedy Krieger Institute,
mm.
at the William S. Bear School here in Baltimore. So it possesses really deep potential in terms of education and healing as well.
Man, that's amazing. Thanks for sharing that. That's remarkable. Um, Man, so in all of these interviews, I've always kind of ended with the same two questions, and last one's easy and fun, and I can't wait to hear what you're gonna leave us with.
Okay.
But we were talking about, I mean, before we got started today, so right before we got on the line, they just called the election for Joe Biden. It's been an intense, that's been an intense moment. We're coming out of 4 years of I don't know, don't even need to say his name. And then, but we've been locked down. I've been in quarantine. I know, you've been teaching over Zoom and stuff, right? For, I don't know, 7 or 8 months now. So an intense time for artists in many ways. And then, I don't know, the last 6 months, I'm getting all my I'm getting all my scale of times off. But I remember talking to you pretty soon after George Floyd's murder, and thinking about you talking about your practice as it relates to breath, um, thinking about George Floyd, and what's become infamous now is I can't breathe on video, and then also thinking about COVID and what that means in terms of masks and breath. And so just I've been thinking about it for myself as an artist, like what it means to make work during this time. What's my role as an artist this time? For me, what's my role as a white male in this time? Like how has this time been for you as an artist, and what has it changed your practice? Or in a lot of ways, I know in talking with you before I press record, I know your mind, your practice may have been in a similar space. Yeah, breathing is universal. Yeah, like your practice may have been in this space for a while, and some of these conversations are coming to the contemporary music community, 100, 250, 600 years late. Like like so I don't know what's been this is just an intense time to make art and to make music. Like, has it changed your practice? Or
It's definitely it's changing my practice in the sense of now more than ever I have to try to go all the way with this concept of breath art, because now everyone is thinking about it. And it's helped me to realize that we've always lived in a breath culture all over the world, whether globally, locally, nationally. And I was already going through a very tough time before COVID-19, before George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Walter Wallace and everything else. So now more than ever, I've been trying to make breath art my primary focus, and I've had some unique opportunities to sort of go deeper into my practice and into my research of that idea. Between COVID 19 being a disease that attacks the respiratory system, to the concept and the slogan of I can't breathe, it's making me explore, okay, how can I use that slogan or explore that slogan holistically as opposed to just letting it fly as a slogan? How can I incorporate that deeper into my work? And I was already heavy into this idea of being a breath artist in the last 2 years, especially. But now I feel that it's being given a much stronger social platform.
mm,
So right now I'm in the process of recording my solo debut album that will feature a variety of different techniques, all expressing some of these ideas and using breath art as the modality. You won't hear any vocal percussion. You won't hear any beatboxing. You will hear
Oh, wow.
only breath compositions, basically. Um,
Wow, that's amazing.
a great example. Well, let me go into my share screen for a second. So this is an article that will come out on Monday. That sort of illuminates some of my ideas of breath art being the primary research and music focus.
Mm.
That's an image of my lungs that I took at Harbor Hospital, and then additional imagery was added to it by the artist Erica Hansen.
Mm. I was gonna
And
say, do my lungs look like that, or I think that's your lungs, man. There's more. You have more. There's more.
yeah, the branches and the windpipe.
That's amazing. This
And
beautiful image, man.
the base of it was an X-ray photo of my lungs.
Wow.
Um, and this is an image of me performing breath art,
Yeah.
specifically emulating the sound of wind.
Mm.
Um, and then here in this article, I sent you the link in the chat space.
Cool.
This is an interview that I did with WOR.
Okay, we're back.
Sort of promoting a masterclass on breath that I was doing for Wisconsin, actually. So yeah, that's another sort of look into the idea, my ideas of breath art. And then actually, let me share one more thing, and this might even be a more universal frame of reference. So earlier this year in the spring, I took it upon myself to try to put together the playlist of all playlists,
Mm.
illuminating different examples of breath throughout a variety of different genres of music and musical paradigms and cultures. So ideas of natural breath in the music and work of Portishead, Sandra Wilson, Fiona Apple, Philip Selway, expressive breath, just like in the song "Girl" by the Beatles.
Yeah.
Chorus section, they do that extended inhalation. Another example, Michael Jackson's Thriller album.
Yeah.
So many examples of expressive and creative breath used throughout the entire album. Musical breath, of course, Bobby McFerrin is a great example. Tom York of Radiohead, Al Jarreau. So this is sort of the research piece reinforcing my own practice, and this is also my way of saying I'm not crazy. This is a thing that has existed
Yeah.
for all of humanity, and I'm just trying to identify it as a genre all into itself.
Yeah.
That's something to do.
Man,
And
it's so cool. I want this playlist. Where do we find this playlist?
I posted this on Facebook.
Cool, man. I'm
Um,
gonna find. I saw Lavelle there. That's maybe the first. Some of the, when I
Yeah.
started to think about it, a little, I thought about Lavelle when I was just listening to yeah, man, Jeff Buckley. What a cool playlist, man. Tribe, Depeche Mode. It goes all over the place, man. Yeah, yeah.
well, yeah,
I
breath
thought-
is a universal thing.
Of course, yeah. Oh
so-
man, how cool.
So this was me doing a deep dive into the idea, and
Yeah,
people
there's.
really responsive to it on Facebook.
Oh man, Caroline Shaw, Pauline Oliveros. We've just been playing some of her music. Yeah, Laurie Anderson. There you go. Yeah, and so many good things there. Bjork, that whole Medulla album is all just voices, right? It's all breath. Yeah.
Album, so many expressive musical. Yeah, it's
Man.
this was really hard to put together, but I really enjoyed it, and I want to expand on this playlist and expand on the research and find more examples throughout time and use these examples as building blocks for how I can do my own work as a breath artist.
Man, that's so cool. I'm so pumped for your first solo album. I mean, I'll listen to you make music in any of these modalities, but the idea of the first one being really all about breath art, that's really powerful, man. I'm really psyched about that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, I'll grab all these links from the chat and make sure we include them on our page with this podcast. That'd be really cool, I think, to include these links.
I'll drop more in the chat space as well.
Yeah, dude, before I'll make sure I grab those before we leave here. I think there's a way for me to copy this chat, but I don't even know how to do it. Well, man, you're gonna have to think about this one. Though you've already shared some pretty cool concert experiences.
Okay.
This last question usually in these hangs, just like I'm really pumped for the show on the 12th, but it's a show unlike other shows, right? Like we're all gonna gather on YouTube, and we're gonna say hey to each other in the chat and take in music, and that's really important. But like, we're not sharing space right now, for taking in sound, so thinking back to just some concert experiences you've had either in the year right before COVID or back to your freshman in college, the first battle, whatever it was, like I would love for you to just share some kind of some concert experience, whether it's an amazing kind of transcendental experience, or whether it's the battle that you lost because your microphone stopped working, or like whatever, like what's the memorable experience to take us out with?
Oh yeah, okay. I know which one to share. And actually it goes back to the conversation of breath art. So I was performing at the Folklore Village, which is where I did my master class, and I'll put a link in the chat space to that as well. But I was performing with Alash, the traditional tube and throat singing ensemble, and it was time for my solo set. So I was I don't. Well, yeah, I did do some vocal percussion and some Tuvin Hume, inspired by Alash. But in the beginning of it, I really took my time with just the breath art piece of it. So I did an emulation of wind blowing in the space, my voice, and I extended it, and then went into some breath percussion and a full beat, and then Tuvin Hume. But afterwards, a couple different people came up to me and said, "Man, when you were doing that, were you trying to harmonize with the wind that was coming in through the windows?"
Oh wow.
And no, I couldn't even hear it, actually, to tell you the truth. And they said, "Well, you should have heard it because I started doing that. The wind was coming in, and there was just complete harmony between the wind you were emulating with your breath and the actual wind coming into the space." Heard that from a couple different people
Wow.
and just thought, wow, well, that's special. And yeah, it's something I want to explore more of, sort of finding more musical harmony with the environment. So yeah, that was, and it's crazy because maybe I did hear it and couldn't realize it at the time, but yeah, it was just one of those moments, and maybe it wasn't meant for me to hear, but still, it was meant for me to experience in a way.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's experiences like that that I look back on now more than ever that inspires me to really get this album done and ready to share with the world by next spring, hopefully.
That's so cool, man. That's so cool. Thanks for sharing that experience. Sorry, I was knocking on the window as you were sharing it. So my kids were biking past. Like, see you later. It's so weird, biking past with their masks on outside, going to a strange space, man. I can't, just thinking of breath, man, that you keep sharing cool stuff I'm gonna try to grab all of these links before we hang up here to make sure we can include some of these. Man, thanks for taking the time to have this conversation though. And I'm very grateful that we connected again after our show in Baltimore a few years back. And like I said, or like I alluded to, we're gonna have to have another conversation because we have another project going on with So right now that we're gonna figure out a way to get into the world in the spring. Maybe it'll be cool to get it out and help you celebrate your album release when it happens.
Oh wow.
You
Yeah.
know,
Okay.
good things happening in the future, man. And I was just so excited to get the tracks that you sent to happen along with our set, our Go Placidly set that we're doing. So man, thanks for everything these last couple weeks of just music making together. It's powerful to be making music with you know, friends and collaborators even when you can't be in the same room. So and man, I
Yeah.
have to say, we may have set the record for the longest Brooklyn Bound podcast, man, because there's just so many other things to ask. I'm not even sure all of the questions I asked were properly answered. There's just so many cool places to go, man. So let's do it again sometime.
Okay. I'll do a part 2.
Deal? And so the show is November 12th. It's at 7 p.m. We will be hanging out on YouTube in the chat. So as you check out Shodekeh's set, I'm sure he'll be around to answer any questions you have. I'm sure you will have some. Like, how the hell did you do that? You know?
I don't even want to watch my solo set.
Yeah, no, I know. I understand that feeling, though. I understand that feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably watch it during the whole, or maybe I'll just mute myself. I don't know during the.
Yeah.
Really excited to hear the other guest
Yeah.
actually.
Soo-yeon's amazing. You'll love what she's doing. She's playing hegum, which is a traditional Korean string instrument. She's pretty wonderful, and she'll also be sitting in on some of the Go Placidly set. So it'll be a good time, man. It'll be a good time. But thank you again. I'm gonna run now. You should run, and I'll see you again on Thursday night.
Awesome. Well, what's the? Well, I guess you'll email me the details about checking in for Thursday.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can do that. And all of you all, yeah, I'll send you the link, which you can find at our website. You can go find out where to go for Brooklyn Bound on the 12th.
Awesome.
Cool, man. Good to see you, Shodekeh.